The morning the CEO's nephew slammed his palm on my desk and demanded my passwords, he thought he was ending my career. What he didn't know was that he had just triggered a trap I had been quietly building for almost 3 years. My name is Lauren Hayes, and for 8 years I was the director of system security at Audit, a mid-sized analytics firm in Chicago that handled sensitive financial modeling for half the Midwest. I had survived 3 CEOs, 2 hostile takeover attempts, and more cyber threats than I could count. I thought I had seen every kind of arrogance corporate America could produce. Then Jason Caldwell walked through our glass doors. The email announcing him arrived on a Friday at 4:52 p.m., carefully timed so most employees wouldn't notice until Monday. Please welcome Jason Caldwell as our new head of strategic innovation. No credentials listed. No previous measurable achievements. Just a title and a last name. Caldwell. Nephew of our CEO, Richard Caldwell. Jason was 29, freshly rebranded after a failed crypto startup and 2 incomplete MBA programs. His LinkedIn profile read like a parody of ambition. Visionary. Disruptor. Future architect. What it didn't say was qualified. From the moment he arrived, he moved like he already owned the place. Expensive cologne. Custom suit. The kind of confidence that only exists when consequences have never been real. By week 2, he was attending my security briefings uninvited. He sat in the back taking notes, asking surface-level questions about encryption protocols like he had just discovered Wikipedia. So who holds the master access credentials? He asked one morning, smiling like we were co-conspirators. Access is segmented, I replied. No one holds everything. That's the point. He didn't like that answer. People like Jason never do. They believe authority should come bundled with control. What he didn't understand was that in cybersecurity, control is earned through paranoia and patience. The escalation started quietly. Requests for temporary admin access, for innovation testing. Invitations to meetings with vague agendas about modernizing infrastructure. I denied them, politely and consistently, citing compliance standards and audit requirements. Every denial was followed by an email to my boss framing me as resistant to transformation. And then came Monday morning. 9:17 a.m. Conference room C, the room without windows. HR was there. My CTO, David Lin, wouldn't meet my eyes. Jason stood at the head of the table like he had been waiting his whole life for this moment. Lauren, he said smoothly, we need to accelerate digital growth. I can't do that if security is slowing us down. Security doesn't slow innovation, I replied. It prevents lawsuits. He smiled thinly. Then he walked around the table, stopped in front of me, and slammed his hand down so hard David flinched. Give me your passwords, he said. All of them. Or you're done here. Silence. I could hear the air conditioning hum. I'll need that directive in writing, I said calmly. Signed by legal and compliance. His face changed. The smile disappeared. I'm giving you a direct order. You're not in my reporting chain. He turned to David. Tell her. David hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. This wasn't just ego. This was coordinated. I stood up slowly. If you attempt unauthorized access, I said evenly, our insider threat system will flag it immediately. That part was true. What I didn't say was that the system had been expanded 3 years earlier after another executive's cousin tried to extract proprietary data. That incident never made headlines. But it changed me. I stopped trusting titles. I started trusting logs. When I returned to my office after that meeting, something was wrong. My secondary laptop, the one I kept locked in a drawer, was sitting slightly crooked on my desk. The USB port was facing outward. Someone had touched it. I checked the door access logs. 10:24 a.m. Executive Override Entry. Authorized by C-suite credentials. My pulse didn't spike. It steadied. This was the moment I had prepared for. 3 years ago, I built something I called the Canary Vault. An offline drive loaded with decoy credentials, synthetic datasets, and tracking scripts embedded at the kernel level. It looked like a backup repository labeled Q4 Infrastructure Archive. Hidden inside was a folder titled insurance_read_before_action. I had designed it for exactly this scenario. Arrogance plus access equals curiosity. Curiosity triggers ego. Ego opens the wrong file. By 3:41 p.m., my private monitoring dashboard lit up. The Canary Vault had been plugged into a networked machine. Jason's machine. He went straight to the insurance folder after browsing 2 others for show. Inside were beautifully organized spreadsheets, executive compensation anomalies, infrastructure restructuring drafts, password inventories. Everything looked legitimate. Everything was fake. The password file was the crown jewel. It contained credentials that mirrored our production systems perfectly. Same naming conventions. Same formatting. The only difference was that every login redirected to a shadow environment I controlled. A mirrored ecosystem filled with synthetic client data, fictional financial projections, and embedded tracking beacons. Every click he made was logged to an offsite server under my personal domain. By 5:12 p.m., HR emailed me. Organizational restructuring discussion. Mandatory. Conference room A this time. Windows. Legal present. They offered me a demotion. Technical compliance associate. 70% pay cut. No system access. A 5-year non-compete that effectively banned me from working in cybersecurity anywhere near Chicago. Sign, Jason said casually, or you're terminated for insubordination. I looked at the contract. I looked at him. Then I signed. The room went still. He had expected outrage. Instead, I gave him compliance. What he didn't realize was that the non-compete included a clause stating it remained valid only if my new role retained substantial similarity to my original responsibilities. A clerk role had 0 overlap with Director of System Security. In humiliating me, they invalidated their own protection. That night, as I packed my office, my phone kept buzzing. Jason was attempting full data exports from the shadow system. Downloading what he believed were client acquisition models and financial forecasting algorithms. He didn't know he was building a criminal record in real time. I sat in my car in the garage and watched the log scroll. Timestamp after timestamp. Attempted database access. Credential escalation. External device connection. He thought he had one. He thought he was about to present revolutionary projections to the board using stolen intelligence. What he didn't know was that every projection he planned to showcase was mathematically flawed by design. Subtle inconsistencies embedded deep enough to survive surface review but catastrophic under audit. I had given him exactly what he demanded. Passwords. Access. Control. And he took it. The next morning at 8:55 a.m., I reported to my new cubicle on the 3rd floor. Desk 3B47. Beside the supply closet. I opened my notebook and began documenting everything. Because here's what most people don't understand about power. It isn't loud. It isn't aggressive. It isn't the person slamming their hand on a desk. Power is patience. And Jason Caldwell had just walked straight into mine. By the end of my first week as a technical compliance associate, Jason Caldwell had already scheduled a board presentation titled Art and Quantics, The Next Evolution. I was in the room taking notes, seated against the wall like furniture, while he clicked confidently through slides built entirely on the synthetic datasets he had stolen from my Canary Vault. The projections were bold. Revenue growth doubled in 12 months. Market expansion into 3 new sectors. Infrastructure streamlined under a centralized authority that, coincidentally, would report directly to him. The board members leaned forward. Some impressed. Some skeptical. I kept my face neutral and documented every word. What Jason didn't know was that 3 days earlier, an external audit firm had been quietly contracted. Not by me. By our general counsel, Patricia Moore. Patricia had been with Arden Quantix for 15 years. She understood patterns. She understood that sudden executive overreach usually meant smoke somewhere. And where there's smoke in a corporate structure, there's almost always fraud burning underneath. The audit began discreetly. Routine compliance validation, they called it. Jason brushed it off as bureaucratic friction. But by week 2, the auditors requested full access to the systems Jason had been modernizing. That's when things shifted. Because the moment they ran verification against the datasets used in his projections, the cracks appeared. Mathematical anomalies. Timestamp irregularities. Credential access logs that traced directly back to his machine. Not mine. His. I was called into conference room A again. This time not as a subordinate, but as a witness. Ms. Hayes, the lead auditor said, "Can you explain why these credentials redirect to a parallel data environment?" I folded my hands calmly. That's a honeypot system. It's documented in Section 7.3 of our security protocols. Designed to detect insider threats. Silence. Jason's face drained of color. "You set me up," he whispered. I met his eyes. "I set up a security system. You walked into it." But the story didn't end there. Because when the auditors dug deeper into the export logs, they discovered something larger than Jason's ambition. The data he downloaded wasn't just being prepared for a board pitch. It had been forwarded to an encrypted external account. An account linked to shell companies. Offshore entities. The kind used in financial manipulation schemes. That's when the FBI entered the picture. Special Agent Laura Bennett introduced herself with quiet authority and a stack of subpoenas. "We're not just investigating data theft," she said. "We're investigating insider trading." The room went still. And then the unthinkable happened. The forensic analysis didn't just point to Jason. It pointed above him. To our chief financial officer, Martin Grayson. Grayson had been with the company since its founding. Trusted. Polished. Untouchable. Except he wasn't. Because the export trail from Jason's stolen projections had synchronized with suspicious stock trades executed 48 hours before internal announcements. Millions in profit. Over 5 years. Jason wasn't the architect. He was the distraction. A reckless pawn placed on the board to create chaos while the real operator moved quietly behind the scenes. When confronted, Jason cracked almost immediately. He admitted Grayson had encouraged him. Promised him control. Promised him influence. Promised him that innovation requires bold risk. What Grayson didn't account for was documentation. He underestimated how thoroughly I logged anomalies 3 years earlier when irregular trades first began appearing around executive meetings. I hadn't accused anyone then. I had simply archived everything. Timestamps. Access records. Trading windows. Email metadata. And when the FBI cross-referenced my archive with financial records, the pattern was undeniable. $42 million in illegal gains. The arrest happened on a Tuesday afternoon. Martin Grayson was escorted out of the building in handcuffs while employees watched from behind glass walls. Jason sat in his office staring at nothing, the weight of consequences finally visible on his face. He asked to speak with me before he was formally charged. I agreed. We met in a small conference room. No audience. No theatrics. I thought I was in control, he said quietly. I thought I was smarter than the system. The system doesn't need to be smarter, I replied. It just needs to remember. He swallowed hard. What happens now? That depends on how honest you decide to be. He cooperated. Testified. Provided communications linking Grayson to a broader financial manipulation ring involving executives at other firms. In exchange, he received probation instead of prison. Grayson wasn't so fortunate. 23 years. Asset forfeiture. Lifetime ban from financial governance. The board restructured. The CEO resigned. Transparency policies were implemented overnight. And as for me? The non-compete clause they tried to bury me under dissolved the moment legal admitted my demotion invalidated it. I resigned the following morning. Calmly. Cleanly. Professionally. I didn't leave Arden Quantix bitter. I left it prepared. Within 2 months, I co-founded a firm specializing in corporate insider threat prevention. We didn't market fear. We marketed clarity. Documentation frameworks. Behavioral anomaly detection. Ethical governance systems. Companies began calling. Quietly at first. Then publicly. Because here's the thing about corporate arrogance. It's common. What's rare is someone willing to document it patiently enough to expose it properly. 6 months later, I received a handwritten note in the mail. No return address. It was from Jason. He had left tech. Taken a job at his father's hardware store in Ohio. Turns out earning something feels different than inheriting it, he wrote. Thank you for letting me fail honestly. I filed the letter with everything else. Because yes, I still document everything. And if there's one lesson I learned through all of this, it's this. The most dangerous person in the room isn't the loudest one. It's the quiet one taking notes. So if you've ever been underestimated at work, if you've ever watched someone weaponize their title, if you've ever felt cornered by power you didn't ask for, remember this. Patience outlasts privilege. Preparation defeats intimidation. And documentation? Documentation never lies. If this story resonated with you, tell me in the comments. Have you ever seen someone think they were untouchable at work? What happened? Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone who needs a reminder that integrity still wins. And until next time, protect your systems, and keep the receipts.